Hi there, I'm Susan Regan, and I'm a seasoned marriage family therapist. I'm also a very experienced couple therapist and family systems therapist, and a certified mediator. I run a lot of groups, I see a lot of couples, I work with a lot of people going through divorce, and I also work with a lot of family conflict and mediation, as well as couple conflict when people are trying to separate and divorce. One thing that I believe is relationships. I believe in relationships being really healthy and strong. And I think relationships are everything. So, some of what I really work on with folks is how to have healthier relationships, not only with yourself, but with your people in your life, so that you can actually live the life that you want to live and not feel like you're in a lot of conflict and imbalance. I think sometimes when we're ego dystonic in our relationships, we really can't even focus. And we might have a lot of health problems or just a lot of anxiety and depression. And so I really want people to get to the bottom of their relationships. I think about relationships in a model of three doors. And I learned this concept when I was getting certified in discernment counseling, which is helping people decide what to do in their relationships. And a lot of times, especially when we have crises like COVID or when we have different life events that happen, we don't do anything to improve our relationships. We just kind of like figure out how to parallel live when we're in our families and in our marriages and our families. We just figure out how to survive. But that can only go on for so long. And then it starts to show up. And whether you're in a family with kids or whether you have friendships, people start noticing the tension and the conflict. It's really hard to keep that hidden. So, what I like folks to do if they're in this, what I call door number one, is they're just not doing anything, then even if you don't do anything, you still have to do something. You still have to have sort of a set of rules that you follow and ways that you can start approaching making decisions, even if it's like, okay, let's create a timeline um, about what you want to do, whether it's to spend some time working on the relationship or spending some time deciding that you want to stay doing nothing because a lot's going on in the family or in your life, or that eventually you want to go on the track of figuring out how you're going to uniquely separate for your situation. Then there's the other part of when people really make a decision like, no, we have to do something. We can't just live like this anymore. Then they might go into a phase of really working on the relationship. And when I work with people in this place, it's like, let's roll up your sleeves, let everyone do their individual work on the relationship, and let's everyone really work on developing better coping skills and skills in general so that the relationship can grow and evolve. I often think that people don't really have a vision about their relationships, that there might be many, many chapters that come into your life when you're in a relationship, and to be really conscious and aware and plan them and discuss them. Like, here's another chapter in our lives. How do we want to be in our couple relationship? What are some of our goals? How will we stay close? What amount of stress is going to break us? Those kinds of discussions is what I'm talking about. So I have actually worked with people who were on the brink of separation, maybe even separated, and they were able to figure out how to get their relationship back on track. And it took a lot of work, but for them, it was really, really worth it because the thought of being apart, if they'd been in a long-term relationship, a lot of folks get into relationships when they're very young and their identity is built around the other person, or they have kids, or they have just a very entwined life that the thought of separating is actually the thought of just having to totally re-identify and recreate your life. Very, very difficult. And so I've seen people really turn their relationships around and start evolving again. Maybe they were just stuck. Maybe they didn't know how. And then there's folks that might have given door number two a chance, or maybe they just feel like they have passed the mark of being able to return back to the other person. That's what I see a lot as well, as people come into therapy and working on their relationships, and it almost feels like too much is built up and they can't break through it. So there might be a lot of hurts. So sometimes the therapy is just going through the hurts and figuring out how to repair some of those hurts. And sometimes it's really about making a very mature and educated decision to separate so that it can be done with the least amount of damage to the family or the extended family or the community that they live in. And I've seen people have really successful separations where they've had discussions, they've done their own work, they understand why this is happening, and they're able to actually regroup in a way that's healthier. Some of which people have been able to stay more connected to the other person, and some of which people have decided that more being more separated and estranged from the other person is healthier for them. So there's lots of options in the way that I work. I work on really just being where people are at. If you're wanting to work in one of my groups, I run a lot of groups with helping people go through separation and divorce. And also a few years after that, recovering, practicing having new relationships, and continuing to work on the parts of themselves that they feel like they need to work on so that they can be healthier in all their relationships. I also work a lot with couples to strengthen their relationships, not necessarily when their relationships are in trouble, but because they feel like their relationships could be better. I work with co-parents, parents who have decided to separate and they still want to be really good co-parents together. So they come at their own will or because they are in a court process and they're really trying to figure out how to parent together and structure their lives so that they can communicate about their kids and stay in a very intact parenting situation while recovering from the separation. And then I have folks who are actually separating and going through a separation process where they are figuring out how to actually structurally divorce. And I have folks that I refer people to get a higher level of separation so that they can make more complicated decisions about their financial picture when they're separating. I also have someone in-house that works right alongside me, writing up a divorce so that everybody can work on this together. I can be the person that holds the emotional container, and then when the person needs to come in to make the separation more legally binding, then all of those forms can be filled out too. So I'm really interested in the whole trajectory of relationships and how families are formed, how families diversify and find unique ways of staying together or unique ways of raising children. And I love what I do. I feel like all my skill set comes together in these forums and with my clients. And so if you have any more questions about the way that I work or any more inquiries that you might want to bring to my attention, there's a lot on my website that could inform you of that, or you can always set up a 15-minute inquiry call with me if you'd like to talk more. Anyways, I'm so glad that you were able to hear a little bit about how I'm working my clinical practice.